Hey y'all! It's the world according to Renita
and Tara.
Hey, we're back. Guess who's back? So we're going to if you listen to our episode on police brutality, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to kind of circle back, as they say.
And she did air quotes, y'all.
To that, because some stuff kind of was triggered and brought up that I thought could be an interesting topic for us. So when we were discussing, Tara, you specifically said, and you were very honest. I mean, I believe we're very honest on here. I think this sometimes can be hard for people to hear. That you explained about when so much was going on, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, you kind of needed a moment, and you needed to kind of step back, and you were willing to talk to your family or people who were experiencing these things. But if I can say it correctly, I think you weren't quite ready with white folks. Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay. So I wanted to come back to that because both of us had and have interracial friendships, right? And I think in an interracial friendship, this isn't a topic maybe it's probably out there somewhere, but talk about as much what that can look like, right? So okay. To me, when you brought that up, I thought, to be fair, I wanted to go back to that, because I could see being on the other side if I was the white friend and you weren't quite ready to talk to me. You could be able to remove that and not take it personal, but I could also see that maybe there's a little bit of hurt feelings from somebody or just not sure how to deal with that. Because if they've never, and this is not just only with black and white friendships, I literally mean interracial, so it's two different races and could be two different cultures, because you're dealing with different things, right? And I thought that would be important to talk about because we've had these experiences on how kind of walking people through our experience with that. And because we didn't go into it, so now we are, to know if you got any, I don't know if pushback isn't necessarily, just what the reaction was when you maybe took a pause or said, I'm not ready to talk about this with some of your white friends. Were they understanding of that? How did that kind of go? Can you tell a little bit about that part?
So for the most part, the people who were asking, I would say, were more colleagues.
Okay.
Who I have friendly relationships with.
Oh, that's important. So right? We're separate. You're right. That's an important distinction. Okay.
And so I can't honestly say what their response was to it. They could have been taken aback, but they were like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I didn't get anyone who was like, but I didn't get anyone who, air quotes, circled back and was like, "Hey, why, or can we talk about this now?" I didn't get any of that from them. I have had other situations that could relate to this, but where are you going?
No, well, I mean, whatever the response was, I was curious because I think it's important, to me, it's important in my friendships that being biracial is a big part of my identity. You know that, and people close to me know that. So for me, being able to talk about issues around race, around racism, around my identity, if I'm not comfortable, I mean, I couldn't have a friendship with somebody. Yeah. I want to be able to call somebody up, and whether I start crying and be like, all this stuff going on in the world is wearing me down, or, somebody was saying offensive things around race, that's really important to me. And I thought about this could be uncomfortable for some people, right? Because depending on, this kind of might sound funny, but if you either grew up or your circle racially all looks like you, right? And then let's say you develop a friendship with somebody that is a different race, and racial topics come up, I can see how that's uncomfortable, and kind of not guiding, because we're, like you spoke in our last episode, we're not experts, but the idea of being honest. I guess for me, the first thing I think is um, being transparent and saying, I would probably prep. I don't have to prep it right now, I guess, to be fair. The white friends and, well, none of my friends are biracial right now. So pretty much not, no, let me be clear. I'm the only biracial person in my circle. So when I want to bring racial things, I don't feel like I have to prep it, but I've also, my circle are people that I've been friends with for a long time. So when we get into these discussions, it doesn't appear that they look uncomfortable, but I know that that's a real thing, right? And so pushing through the uncomfortability and being able to say, hey, I think what we forget is it's okay to say, I don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay that I have to say to people, I'm concerned about when my son gets older. And for instance, when we were talking about police brutality, like what that life could look like for him and what he's going to be seen as, right? But I also understand as I say that to somebody who doesn't have that same experience, they might sit there and go, oh, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Somebody may not want to just be quiet, right? Mm-hmm. So you look like you want to say something.
I do.
Go ahead.
Now that you said that, I have two stories. I don't want to fill up a lot of time with it, but I have two stories.
No, we got time.
With two white friends.
Okay.
Who responded differently to conversations about race.
Okay.
So the first one is almost identically what you just said. I have a white girlfriend who has a son, same age as my son. Her son was having some issues at school. The teacher called and was like, hey, can you come in so we can have a conversation about your son? He's being disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's sick, so they do that.
Right.
And they wanted to have a conversation about that. And she was totally okay with going in and having a conversation. And so we were talking about it, and I was like, that's one of the things that scares me. And she's like, well, what? And I was like, my son being labeled. Your son can go and his teacher can have a conversation about him being disruptive, but he won't be labeled as that black kid who mm-hmm. doesn't listen, is being disrespectful, Mm-hmm. So I get where you're coming from, but there's a whole other layer for me. Mm-hmm. And she leaned into that. She's like, I never really thought of it that mm-hmm. way. That's crazy. And then we kind of had a conversation about that. Mm-hmm. Love. Both of us care about each other. We had honest conversation mm-hmm. about it. Like I got her feelings, she got mine as much as we could, right?
Wait, can I ask you something before you go to the next story?
Yes.
Was that odd? Did you have any feelings or any thoughts before you shared that, or was that an automatic thing to be like, I understand, I have this additional piece? I'm just curious from your side to just speak on that. Was that...
I don't know if it's a factor of our relationship, but I didn't have any issue in saying it. And it wasn't an Oprah thing where I was like, I have your problem too, girl. Right. It was just like, I hear you and
you
this.
Said Oprah thing.
Oprah has a thing.
I know. So, you told me all. I remember that. That's funny.
Anyway, so second situation happened a little differently. And in fact, this white friend, I considered us really super close. So the first one, our friendship was a little younger, mm-hmm. but we have some things in common, mm-hmm. and like we really get along. But this person, I thought we were like super close, on the same wavelength. Don't want to use the word woke, but I had an image, right?
Okay.
So my son starts going to his school, and I noticed that there are pictures in the office mm-hmm. of like kids in the school office. None of those kids are black. And so I had a conversation with my husband, like, hey, we got some work to do over at the school.
Right.
And I happened to talk to this girlfriend about that. We were actually in the bathroom at work having this conversation between stalls. I know that might have been too much information.
No, this is hilarious.
But her response was, well, maybe there aren't a lot of black kids there. And so without things halted.
Right.
I took a pause for a second. And I was like, so what? Like, the world is full of different looking people.
Yeah.
Those kids will go out into the world. Like, why wouldn't they have black kids on the wall? And in fact, there are black kids at the school.
Class.
And the principal is black. Like, how did we miss this?
Mm-hmm.
And so she goes on and she's like, well, it's probably about the makeup of the school. What I heard was a whole lot of excuses.
Okay.
Rather than what I expected. So really, this might have been an issue of my expectations being violated. But what I expected was, damn, girl, like, what are we going to do? Like, to lean in. I keep saying lean in. That's the third time.
That's okay.
But to really jump in and understand what it was, right?
Okay.
Like, her kid, actually, what she said was, my son is actually a minority at his school. And I was like, okay. In my mind, I know there are white kids on that wall, but what if there weren't?
Right.
Like, what if it was a wall full of black kids and he didn't see himself represented there? But it got stopped before we had a conversation because I was so incredibly disappointed in that response. So that friendship was shaky. We still talk, but not the same way because I was just so incredibly disappointed by the response.
Okay, so I want to ask something, just, to look at this from so many layers, right? Because there's somebody could be listening that goes, oh my gosh, I could be that white friend, and I don't want somebody to not be my friend, because that's literally that person's truth. That's what she thought, right?
Yep.
So I understand about the disappointment. I'm curious, and I'm not saying you have to do this, but what made you go, this is not a teachable moment, this is not something I'm going to take time to do? Do you know why that kind of stopped you?
I do. It might not be the nicest thing to say, but this wasn't the first instance, right?
Okay.
There have been many Trump conversations that have transpired that I tried to ignore, but like there's so much there that this was just like the straw.
Okay, so this is literally for you. It was like, do you feel like if this would have been the first thing, you could have continued on, or this to you was the straw that broke the camel's back because it was so many awkward either comments or comments? I don't know what's the right word, because I don't
think disappointing. I'm just gonna leave it at disappointing because I still think it was a violation of my expectations and not so much something that she did to me or like perpetrated against me. I think I just expected a response that I didn't get. And if it had been the first time, I know I would have said something because we've had conversations about race prior to that.
Okay.
And no, I don't expect all of my friends to agree with me. In fact, most of the friends that I have don't agree with me.
We don't?
Girl, please.
Say what?
About a lot of things.
Really?
So it's not that. It's just like the humanity piece of it, like the kid piece of it, like the representation piece of it, and all of that just was all wound up in like my feelings and emotions.
Okay. So I'm just thinking out loud of like how going forward in interracial friendships, what we so being on this is getting me tongue tied. On my side of it, I guess, is just actually continuing to talk about,
to navigate it.
Yeah, to keep talking about the topic, and to also say, I guess as a biracial person and being in a world, because I am black and white, I see a lot of things happen where I feel like, okay, I can see, even if I don't agree, I can see where certain people that I know that maybe are only with people who look like them, they didn't really grow up really interacting with a lot of people. So I feel like I want to, I'm sorry, I'm really struggling with my words. I actually probably say a little bit more of like, I'm going to bring something to you. I'm going to talk about a topic. And it's okay if you don't know what to say. It's okay.
Wait, hold up.
Yeah.
So do you give a preamble because you know that their opinions are different? Like, why would you give a preamble? Like, why would you give them warning? To put them on notice? Like, what's happening in your mind?